Hey everybody, welcome back to the Maple Grove Scripture Reading Podcast. So last time we opened Job 29, which was the beginning of Job's final soliloquy. He started with longing, how I longed for the months gone by, and then he built up a picture of what those months were like. And what he reached for first wasn't the wealth or the position, but it was God's presence, the lamp shining, the intimate friendship of God over his tent, the Almighty still with him. The children around him, the abundance of cream and oil came last as the overflow of everything else. The loss he was mourning most deeply wasn't material. Today, Job moves from the private to the public, from his household to his place in the life of the city. So let's read Job 29, verses 7 through 17. When I went to the gate of the city and took my seat in the public square, the young men saw me and stepped aside, and the old men rose to their feet. The chief men refrained from speaking and covered their mouths with their hands. The voices of the nobles were hushed, and their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouths. Whoever heard me spoke well of me, and those who saw me commended me, because I rescued the poor who cried for help, and the fatherless who had none to assist them. The one who was dying blessed me. I made the widow's heart sing. I put on righteousness as my clothing. Justice was my robe and my turban. I was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy. I took up the care of the stranger. I broke the fangs of the wicked and snatched the victims from their teeth. So Job goes to the gate of the city and takes his seat in the public square. A little bit of context here. The city gate in the ancient world wasn't just an entrance. It was the courthouse, the marketplace, the town meeting, all in one place. Business was conducted there, legal disputes were settled there, community decisions were made there. So when Job takes his seat in the public square, he's describing a place in public life, not as a spectator, but as somebody who held a position. And when he gets there, look at what happens. The young men step aside. The old men, men with seniority, men who had earned their own place of respect, they stand up when Job arrives. The chiefs go quiet and cover their mouths with their hands. The nobles hush. Every tier of the social world does the same thing. They defer to Job. And it's not out of fear exactly. It's more like when Job showed up, talking felt like the wrong response. The right response was to listen. Job's not describing this, though, to boast. He's describing what he's lost. He's sitting on the ash heap right now, covered in sores, and this is the life he's remembering. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Whoever heard Job spoke well of him. Whoever saw him commended him, but it says why. Because he rescued the poor who cried for help, and the fatherless who had no one to assist him. That word, because, it's doing a lot of work. The respect Job received wasn't purely a function of rank or wealth, though he had those. The commendation came from something specific. He rescued the poor and he took up the cause of the fatherless. Think about athletes or public figures who have a real reputation in their communities for showing up when somebody needs something, not just for their platform, but for what they actually do with it. The ones who are genuinely respected tend to be the ones where the reputation is actually earned. Like they showed up, they really did help, and they really put something at stake. And that's what Job is describing. Then it gets really specific. The person on the verge of death, which not really a category, but an actual individual who is dying, received enough from Job that their last words toward him were a blessing. The widow, whose circumstances were grim enough that joy probably felt a long way away, had her heart made to sing. Not helped, not assisted, singing. That's what Job's presence did in her life. These aren't categories. These are people. Job said something here that I think is worth looking at. He says that he put on righteousness as his clothing, that justice was his robe and his turban. Not that he possessed righteousness or practiced it or believed in it, but that he wore it. The way clothing defines how you appear to others and what role you're understood to be playing, righteousness defined how Job showed up. It was visible. It shaped what people saw when they looked at him. And the turban, which is the most visible piece, the one sitting on top of everything, was justice. Now, here's something else worth noticing. Back in chapter 22, Eliphaz accused Job of stripping the naked of their clothing, withholding water from the weary, withholding bread from the hungry, sending widows away empty. Point for point, Job is describing the exact opposite. He didn't strip anybody. He put on righteousness like a garment. He didn't withhold from widows. He made their hearts sing. Now, whether or not Job is consciously thinking about Eliphaz as he says this, it's answering every charge that Eliphaz was fabricating. Then he keeps going. He was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. Now, he's not saying that he healed them or restored them or anything like that. He just means that he took their place when they couldn't function. He saw for the blind when seeing was required. He moved for the lame when movement was required. He became the capacity that they lacked. And then he says he was father to the needy, not a benefactor, not a patron, not a giver, but a father. That's so much more warm and personal than just charity. The needy weren't a cause that he supported. They were a people he claimed a relationship with. He took up the case of the stranger. The stranger had no standing in the legal systems of the ancient world, no kinship network, no elders to speak on their behalf at the gate. If you had no family in the city, you had no legal voice. You were completely exposed. Well, Job went to the gate and spoke for the people who couldn't speak for themselves, the people everybody else looked past. And then he closes with this. He broke the fangs of the wicked and snatched the victims from their teeth. Fangs, prey being held in teeth. Job breaking those fangs and pulling the victim free. It's not passive virtue or good intentions. It's stepping into a situation where harm is already happening and then stopping it. Think about what that looks like practically. Somebody at the gate is pushing through a fraudulent claim against a widow. Somebody's manufacturing a legal case to strip a poor man's land. The fatherless child is being exploited because there's nobody to object. And Job is the one who objects. He shows up and says, this isn't going to happen while I'm here. There's something hard about sitting with all of this, knowing where Job is now. He's describing a life of genuine and active righteousness. Not perfect, but real. The blind had eyes through him. The widow was singing. The dying were blessing his name. And none of it protected him from the ash heap. The friends have been implying that's incoherent, that good people don't end up in places like this, or that Job must have done something to deserve it. Job keeps describing what his life actually looked like, and the picture doesn't match the theory. It hasn't at all as we've been looking through this. A life of breaking the fangs of the wicked, of being a father to the needy, of making the widows sing. And here he is scraping himself with a potsherd, and he knows it. Now, next time we're going to finish up Job 29. We'll get through verses 18 through 25. We'll see Job's description of what he expected the rest of his life to look like and the kind of authority he held among the people when things were good. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you again soon. God bless.